Hello, welcome to another Random Code stream. I'm going to be working on my Spackle library again. First of all, filling up on the becoming traditional coffee, or at least having a drink around. But it's the morning for me. It's my last day of vacation, and it has been a glorious one. I like getting... I don't like saying recharged is the wrong word, but I definitely feel like taking time off from work is a very good thing, because it gets you away from work and what you do with that, which is your primary focus throughout your whole life, if you think about it. So not that it, again, for me, it's not a slog. For me, it's not a bad thing, because I like what I do. I like where I work, and I like the people that I work with. So that's all good. But even with that, being able to take a break with something and do something else is always a good thing. Like I play music, and sometimes I don't play guitar for days on end, just because I want to take a break from it. And then then I'll get into a mood where I just want to play it every day. So I think it's just good to, you have passions and focus and hobbies and stuff, but it's good to have the mind switch up on different things. So let me get my music going here. So yeah, today's going to be my last day. I've got some things to do around the house, and I also want to stream more Control later. I'm really enjoying that game. It's definitely keeping my attention, and I'm wondering where things are going. So what I'm going to do in this stream is continue working on this Indeces thing. So before I get into that, I want to mention real quick that I did put an issue with this, and when I search to see if previous issues exist for something, I don't do a good job in looking at closed issues. And so there was actually an issue for this already. And its milestone, as I found out, it's fixed. Like, the issue is considered fixed, but the milestone is 18.3. And if you look at Visual Studio, the one I have is 18.1.1. I'm like, that's quite a ways out. If that milestone matches, like if I go to this issue that is closed, you look at the milestone here. Where is it? Here, 18.3. I'm like, wow, that's quite a long one. And like, it's like .NET 11? What? Who? Where? The next open release of Visual Studio, backlog. Yeah, I'm like, wow, that's... And honestly, the more I thought about this, I'm like, this issue is actually not a good one, because it breaks you. If you try to change code that was there for extensions and using the new extension syntax, it breaks, and it is considered a bug. So what do? Do you just have to, like, put a comment around your comment, your XML comment, to say, we'll come back to this later when it's fixed? I know it may not seem like a big deal, but when you're authoring libraries and packages and you're putting XML comments in, you expect them to work. And you expect, all I heard about the new extension syntax was, oh yeah, you can just move right to it. It's nothing, it all works. Well, apparently it doesn't all work. The XML comments do not work. In fact, as I mentioned in here, I'll zoom in on this a little bit. It also doesn't work with type param, and I don't find an issue with this, so I'm going to have to log that. I asked Cyrus if there was an issue out there, but I'm just going to be like, after I'm done with this stream, I'm just going to make that log and let the chips fall, because that's an issue too. You can't reference type params that are on the extension in members within that extension scope, if you want to think of it that way, or the extension block. So yeah, a little disappointing that I feel like some of this got missed, and I don't know how it got missed. Because again, these are not things that you can dismiss. They're compiler bugs. And so you have to address them in some way, shape, or form. So, oh well, I guess we have to do with what we got. So, speaking of which, We did make some progress with this indices up. We got the first one done with char value. Okay, so how many more do we want to do? If we look at self.index of oh, there's a, that's interesting, index. Returns an enumerable that incorporates the element's index into a tuple. I have no idea what that means. But with index of, we have char value. I thought about this when I started the stream. I don't think I want to include a start index, because to me, it may be that could be added later on, but I think right now all I'm trying to do is find the indices of all the locations of what you're looking for, not necessarily to start like halfway through the string or something like that. So there's a start index. There's a read-only span of char value, string. What's the count? The number of character positions to examine. Again, not interested in providing like an override for that. We do want to have the string comparison. So which ones do we want to have here? We want to have indices of string, and then we want to have indices search for all of these, for all the strings. The string char, not start index, char value. We do also want the string comparison one. And then a string with the string comparison. A read-only span would be good. So we could do that as well. There. Oops, I don't want to save it. Okay. So these are the ones that we want to add, and then I think we'll be done with this feature. So let's do this. What are they calling that? Comparison type. And enumeration value. Wait, could I? No, I'm not inheriting, so I can't use the inherit of, so that doesn't work. Enumeration value specifies the rules for the search. An enumeration value that specifies the rules for the search. Let's just go there, because it should. Oh crap! It doesn't. Okay. Bummer. Enumeration value specifies the rules. Was I right? Sure. Okay. So all we're going to do is pass in comparison type. Oh. Is there one that's like a char value that says... That's interesting. There isn't a char value. There's one that takes... Here, the one that says the zero base index for the string comparison. But then after that, there isn't. So guess what? We're not doing that. Because there's no way to really map that. So we won't do that. Okay, so this is the first one we... And then we want... And then what did I call it in the issue? I called it index search, but... well, does it make sense to call it indices search or index search? I think indices. So we want unique or overlap. Specifies the kind of search to do in Sure, that works. Only find unique values. Find all values, even if their content overlaps. Okay. The kind of search to do on see, it didn't show up in the help here, but these work for some reason. The one down here, though, doesn't. Which is just weird. Why does it work sometimes and not others? Okay, so in this case, we're going to suppress because you're specifically saying you don't want to do that. And there is an overload for index of that allows that. So I do want to continue that. The where this comes into play, though, the indices search is right here. Okay. Because the start index of where we want to search again will either be if indices search is equal to indices search.unique, it's going to be 0, which is not true. Otherwise, it's going to be this. In other words, if you allow overlap, if you found it at index 0, you're going to look at index 1. You're going to look at index 2. You can allow overlaps. So this one, though, says that if you were looking for, let's say, let me put in 0 here again, just to... If you were looking for AA and your target was BAA ACCA, the first one you're going to find is here. That's at index 1. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to say your next index is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. So you want to say it's 1, the index you found it at, plus the length of the string. The length of the search string. Oh, I need to do that. There. And then we need to put in the... Oh! I never said what the returns is. An array containing all of the indices for and then we need to say exception here. Thrown if oh, param, sorry. There. Okay. Guy, why are you sending me a thing in the server? Okay. So apparently you're watching. Use indexes as the plural form of indices. Okay, so fair enough. I can change these. This isn't a big deal. What guy sent me, why he didn't send it in the chat here? Maybe because you can't. I don't know. Can you? Is that the problem? Is that the chat isn't allowing you to put in URLs? I'm betting that's why you did that. But yeah, I looked up what is the plural of index before I did any of this. And it said indices. So that's why I decided to pick that. But I am perfectly fine with using indexes. We have always been at war with Eurasia. Yeah, chat doesn't... Earls. And then we want to change that. Okay. Okay. And then we need to change the name of this. So we didn't get too far. I thought I did the right thing, but I didn't. No, that Microsoft actually was very picky about that. So. All right. So anyway, from that distraction, this should skip over then. So what it will do then, it will start here. Zoom in on that a little bit. It will start here. And then what it will find next is this one. If we were doing overlap, it will find one as the starting index, and then it will say, fine, we're going to move to this one. So it would find that one and that one. And this is actually probably an interesting test just to show that it's doing what we think it should be doing. Okay. So let's go to our tests. Oh, we should change the names of these two. So we could do this. We should be able to say that. And then indexes search unique. So in this case, we should find one and have 3. If we did overlap, you'll do the same thing, okay? Now if we said here, with unique, if we come into this, and we pick this, say that's, we say we want to find unique, what this should do is find 2, and the one at 0 should be 1. And the one at 1 should be, what would that be? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. Okay, and then we need multiple strings exist with overlap. So we want to do this. Oh, I need to put in A and then overlap. Now in this case, there'll be 3. So the first one's still correct. The third one. But now we have 1 here at that, and that should be 2. Maybe I'm going to failure. Yeah, this comment thing. It doesn't work. Ugh. Gross. I don't know. I don't know why it doesn't work in some cases. Yeah, it just won't work here. It's one of those weird bugs. It's like, why doesn't it work here? All right, so now if we run over our tests, they all pass. We probably should have when no string exists. And it doesn't matter in this case what it is. Where'd you go? There you go. So you can see here, we can put in Q. And we'll just assert that this is 0. And then we will put... All right, so... I'm too used to spelling it the other way. All right, fine. Whoops. No. There, now we should have eradicated it. There. Eradicated indices. And I guess I should have made sure the tests all pass, but they do. Okay. All right. So that gets that one done. And then we should include these two more. Okay. So this we want string comparison. Comparison type, which is what we did. Oh, we were going to do it, and then I should have copied the text. Oh, well. Okay, so is there a default value for this? Current culture. Because, yeah, I didn't want to... self.indexes of value indexes search, except we're going to put in string comparison current culture, because that is the 0th one, and there's no reason to do that. Indices kept making me think of the word feces. Jeez. Well, we all have our associations, so you know. And by the way, if you're watching, you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet, please do so. I would really appreciate it. And if you have, thank you for doing so. I appreciate you. Yeah, I do get the thing about indices. It sounded a little odd. I was actually going to start with indexes of, but I'm like, is that actually the right plural form of index? And it isn't, but, well, okay. If I go to dictionary.com, indexes, search, no results found for indexes. See, Microsoft's wrong. So, you know. Okay, param value. What is it? I forgot already. One of the enumeration values that specifies the rules. One of the enumeration values that specifies rules. Okay. All right. None of this should have broken any of our tests, and they don't. Okay. Now, again, I'm not trying to test the string comparison value, and then I'm passing it incorrectly. I guess we could do current culture, because there's like a current culture ignore case, right? Yeah. And so we could do a test that just passes in that we're ignoring the case, and then have different A up and down values to make sure that it works the way we want it to. Okay. So let's do this. Get indices when one... Wait, I don't want... What did I do? I want to get string, right? Yeah. Okay, one string exists with unique, except here we want to use a value that we know isn't the default. Now in this case, it'll be the same thing. Naming is hard. Okay, so now what we're going to do is that. This one doesn't matter what we do. Except these will. So what we want to have here is like A. And if we ignore case with this, now we want to find unique. We should find 4, right? So this would be at 0. And this would be 1, 2, 3. We find that. 2, 3 is equal to 0. So we're finding 2, 4, 6. Okay, what are you... Nah. And then when we do want this, except we're going to say overlap, we're going to have 8. I think. 0 will be at 0, 1 will be at 1, 2 will be at 2, and guess what? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is this JavaScript? No, this is C#. Run all my tests. One failed. Oh my god. I'm a horrible developer. 7. Oh, yeah, right. Duh. Because you won't get to the last one. Okay, cool. Yippee! Git commit. 50. Added another indexes of. All right. Next one should almost be a copy of what we did. And that's the last one, except we're doing read-only span. Read-only span of char. Right. You won't throw in this case because yeah, you won't throw in this case because that is a struct. Do you recommend me to learn code in 2026? I don't know. Should you? C#. Oh, you're just giving a description. I don't think. Again, I mean, yeah, why not? I mean, why not learn it? I mean, no amount. How do I say this? Technology can always raise the level of abstraction, right? You know, if you look at how developers worked 50, 60 odd years ago, and you look at the languages that existed in even the 40s, 50s, 60s, very primitive, hard to work with. You know, one of the reasons that C was created is because they, you know, and COBOL too, was to get away from having to do assembly code and write in a syntax that was somewhat easier to understand, among other reasons. But that raised the level of abstraction to make developers work, to hopefully make them work faster. Whether that really happened or not is arguable, but that was, I think, one of many intents. You look at tools, like I bring up this one all the time. When I started back in 1995 as a professional developer, Visual Basic 3 didn't have IntelliSense. In fact, I don't think any IDE had the notion of IntelliSense. VB4 was the first one to do it. And people these days that start as developers don't understand or know what that experience is like to not have to remember what a function and its parameters need to take, or what members exist on a particular kind of object. It was such a time saver. It made things so, and you didn't have to, it started to get you away from, you have to remember everything in your head, to I have to remember more concepts, more how do I want to get from point A to point B. And it's not necessarily that I have to remember all the parameters to message box show, you know. But did that mean that I didn't need to know that a message box was there? I still needed to know that if I wanted to show a message to the user. And so you go through the whole evolution of software development and programming languages. Will we ever get to the point where we are truly quote unquote coding in English, or coding in a human language, not a programming language? I don't know, maybe. Some people may argue to say we're already there. I don't think so. The thing is, you know, the thing too with programming languages is that you have preciseness, you have repeatability, you have determinism. You know, when I write my code one way, when I write this code that you see here, it's going to do a particular thing. If I write my code this way, you see there's errors because, you know, like this doesn't work that way. So you have that repeatability. Languages that humans use evolve, and so do programming languages. But programming languages evolve, I think, in a very strict, in a very strict way, much more than human languages. And so you have ambiguity in play. You have, is this what I really meant for this to do? You know, So will we ever get to the point that, yes, you can do everything with prompts and agents and or however we call these things years from now, to the what I would consider the quote unquote ideal, where you're on, the Star Trek Enterprise and you can say, computer, lay out a diagram for to invert the quantum flux capacitor or whatever it is. Maybe we get there, but you also notice that all the people on the Enterprise are also typing directly into consoles too, in a different way. So it's like, I think there'll still be that human interaction type of hard interface. So learning programming languages, yeah, I think there's a huge amount of value to that. That has not gone away. And don't buy into the hype that programming languages are disappearing rapidly. I personally don't buy into that. I don't think we're there. And to me, that's not really the goal. It shouldn't be the goal. The goal to me is always, am I producing something that works correctly, that works the way it's expected to work, and hopefully works in a very fast, memory efficient way as well. That's what I'm trying to get out of what I write when I'm writing software. And it's to solve problems for people. It's to solve issues for people. Sometimes it's just fun to write, code just to make, to do other things. And that's fine. But at least with what I do, a lot of it is typically just solving a problem. And the medium that I use is a programming language. So I wouldn't personally say you need to, you don't need to learn programming language anymore. How do you know if the thing that is producing all of this code for you is correct? I think that's still a problem, no matter how much people are going to tell me, oh yeah, I have Claude or these other LLMs producing all this code for me and all these tests for me and doing all the PRs for me, and it's awesome and I don't have to do anything until it doesn't work. Then what? It's a very interesting world, and I would highly recommend still learning programming languages. I would highly recommend that. I would even go as far to say go the opposite direction and learn x86, learn assembly, learn the architecture of a processor. Why not? You may never use it, and that's fine. But knowing how all of the stuff still works underneath the scenes, I think is invaluable. At the very least, you have a mental model in your head of what am I building here? It still is going to go down to a 0 or 1. And at least having somewhat of an understanding of what those low levels are doing, I think at least helps. You don't have to know like every single assembly opcode. You don't have to know all of that stuff. I don't think that's necessary. But again, I'm not discouraging people from learning that. I think because again, that's still underlying fundamentally everything we do. We don't have quantum computers yet. Everything is still a 0 or a 1. And I think it's helpful to understand, because that space is still evolving. There's a lot of evolution that's happened with like SIMD instructions and stuff like that. I think it's good to know how those things actually help you if you're doing vectorization or if you're doing tensors or if you're doing other types of operations that exist in LLMs. So yeah, I'm going to try to learn the guitar in 2026. Will I be in a famous rock band? Probably not. Will I learn something and maybe improve my brain and stave off dementia? Hopefully. Yeah. I mean, learning new things is been shown to exercise the brain. It's been shown to, keep you, I don't want to say like alive per se, but in a sense of who you are. It keeps you alive. It keeps you searching, keeps you interested, keeps you, if all I did was say, well, I'm just going to have AI write me a book that I have an idea of. Did you really write the book? Who wrote that book? How did all that material exist in the LLM for it to create what you did? Where did that come from? How was that sourced? There's some very ethical things to ask yourself here too. I mean, going off on a rail here a little bit, but is it worth spending the time for you to write something yourself? And I think as this whole AI LLM debate keeps raging, I think that's the area that I have a big problem with. It's using it in code, I think as a tool can be helpful. Using it as a way to create music, to create books. Are you really creating? And what are you stealing? And how much is being used from an environmental standpoint to create that crap? There's also some very, very sketchy things, Grok, that are going on right now with AIs. And I have a very negative view of that stuff. And I think rightfully so. We really need to rein in what's going on. And if we say we can't do that, that's a bunch of crap. We got people to wear seatbelts in cars. We got people to stop smoking in airplanes and hotel rooms and restaurants. If we want to make a choice as a society to do something, we can do it. We can do it. Sorry, I go on a kind of a tangent and a rant with this stuff, but yeah. Remember being able to write code in a notebook with pen and paper? Yeah. Maybe in the future there'll be a market for artisanal handcrafted code written by humans. Yeah, at the end of the day, you are just paid to solve a problem. That's what you're really paid to do. And I also don't think that speed is the only metric you should use. If all you're doing is saying, I don't care, what you did or what tools you did to get something done. If you can get it done in 5 minutes or an hour, do it in 5 minutes. Well, what are you sacrificing to do that? Maybe nothing at all, or maybe you are. Are you reducing the chance of somebody knowing what that code's actually doing? Do you know that it's actually really doing what it should be doing? Some of the codes I'm using zero. Well, there are ternary computers. There is architecture for ternary. It's kind of, I think actually in Russia, there was this idea that, this is back like in the 60s or 70s of having a ternary computer. I was seeing a lot of ebooks on Amazon that look, I have rapidly come to the point that you have to triple check and double guess everything you see these days. The enshittification, and I will use that word here, of the internet is gargantuan. I don't think some people really truly understand or realize just how awful it's become. And you really have to be careful with when you're, like Guy said, when you're looking for, I want to purchase a book. Well, was this book actually written by somebody, or was it just slopped up together? Did somebody really create this piece of artwork, or did they just say to some tool, hey, create me a picture of this where this happens and then this is in the background? You got to be really careful with, and also from a security standpoint. I belong to a group where I work. It's called InfoSec Champions, and it doesn't run just with technology. It's with anybody who has an interest in being like a security champion, building up this community, raising awareness within the community, and also with family members and stuff like that. Things to be careful about, things to watch out for. And it is frightening how much is becoming social engineered to the point where you can't tell unless you're really, really thinking about, wait a minute, why is this person, or this thing that's talking to me on the other end? The interactions that you can do now are honestly amazing, and that's very, very scary from a security standpoint. So, yeah. Anyway, let me get this method done. So to answer your question, yes, learn programming languages. There's no harm in it. There's absolutely no harm in learning anything, and like I said, you don't go to a gym and have a forklift lift the weights for you. You go to a gym, or you work out at home or whatever. You ride a bike, you go running, You do it yourself. Why? Because you're the one benefiting from it. Now if I'm working in a factory and we need to move a whole bunch of stuff around, yes, let's use tools. Let's use forklifts. Let's use those little cart things that you pump up and then somebody can pull a whole bunch of crap around instead of doing it all by hand. Of course you would do that. That's where you're using those tools to make things easier for yourself. Okay. So I'm learning Python. Great. Awesome. Learn Python. I personally don't really care for Python, but I'm not saying people shouldn't learn it. There's a language I would try to learn myself. This is just me speaking. This is not a thing of, well, should I learn this too? Is maybe like Go, or Odin, or maybe Rust. I don't know, something like that. That's just my personal preference. So anyway, okay. So we don't need this on here. So there is only one, if I saw, remember there's only one that was a read-only span. Ah, okay. And that one only takes a string comparison. You can't, that's interesting. You can't start at an index of the span at a particular point to do the search. Then we're not going to do this. We need to have that ability, so that's gone. So we're done. So now we have a couple of extension methods on string that allow us to pass in a, yeah, it's my first language, so I think it's a good place to start. It is. I mean, I personally like languages. I mean, okay, so for me, C# is just my go-to language because I've literally been programming in it for probably 25 years. I mean, I started doing stuff with it before it was released. I had access to beta bits at the time and things like that. So I've been programming in this language for literally 25 years. And it is still modern and relevant to this day, and it's still being updated. So for me, it's the language that I'm the most fluent in. I would tend to, I don't like JavaScript. I'm not really a big fan of Python. I tend to like languages that have a really strong notion of type safety. I actually like TypeScript, not necessarily JavaScript, but TypeScript. And I think it would just be interesting to learn more, I want to say lower level languages, but things like Rust and Odin and Zig and languages like that, I think would be good to learn. Different takes on how do you do stuff that would be like what C would do, except in a 2025 setting or 2026. I gotta switch that in my head. It's 2026. So, all right. By the way, I'll do that reminder again. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I would really appreciate it if you did that. And thank you again if you have already. All right, so I think we can say this is done. This issue is done. We now have a way to get... So the next time I do Advent of Code, and I run into, I really wish I could find all the indices of a particular character in a string, I now have an extension method to do that. And we can do it with string value, and we can also do it with comparison. So yeah, I kind of like that. I kind of like that. So let's commit this, and the work is done. Time for a merge. All right, give me a second while I do all the merging here. Thinking of learning C++. I want to make a game or something on my free time. C++ would be one of them. Interestingly enough, the guy who wrote the video games Braid and The Witness has been working on a programming language called Jai, J-A-I. His name is Jonathan Blow. And his next game is going to be coming out this year, Order of the Sinking Star. I think that also means, and I'm not 100% sure on it, that the language will also be finally released. And he wrote this language specifically because he was tired of C++ as a game developer. So he wrote Jai particularly with, I want to say with a game developer intent, but that's also where this was driven from. So that might be something just to keep in your head in this year to go, maybe that language is something too. I don't know. That might be one I take a look at too. If it finally comes out, I don't know if it's going to be open sourced. Jonathan Blow seems a little ambivalent towards open sourcing stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where that goes. All right. So let's do git manage branches. Go here. Merge that. Pushed that, and that. Yes, and now we can close the issue. Yay! Close issue. All right. What do we have left in this little library that I want to do for 14.0? Create a method to return a range. Yeah, what Guy just said. Godot or Unity. I think they use C#. I think Unity uses kind of an old, kind of creaky version of C#. That's been one of the criticisms of Unity, if I remember right. But yeah, it's been used to create some very popular games. This guy mentioned both Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight Silksong. But again, their engine hasn't been updated in a while. So if you go use it, if you look at like what you can do in C# 14, and then you go to Unity, I think it's like C# 5 or something like that, or maybe 6. So it can kind of throw you for a loop because it doesn't have all the things that you would see in the modern version of C#. So I don't like the complexing stuff of a motor with my control. Maybe making my own. Maybe making my own. The cry of every developer out there. And I'm not laughing like I'm mocking you. I mean, hell, I've written. If I go to Rocks here, this is a mocking framework that I created called Rocks. So if you're in .NET and if you've ever used a mocking framework like MOQ or NSubstitute, this is in a similar vein, except it's using source generators. And so you can basically do all your setups. You can say, I expect this method to be called, and then I get my mock, and then, well, in this case, I'm just calling it, but I might pass that into something, and then I can make sure that's being called with the code under tests and verify and blah, blah, blah. I wrote that all myself. Why? You can say, oh, there's already MOQ and NSubstitute out there. Why should I build another one? And in fact, I even addressed that question here, which is, yeah, there already are libraries out there. So why did I try to create YAML, yet another mocking library? And so I've got a couple of explanations as to why I did that. So no, I'm not saying don't make your own, but because I have learned so much by making this framework and building it and maintaining it for 10 years. This is out of my entire career. Side projects, working on stuff for my employer, whatever it is. I have spent the most time on this throughout my entire career. And I have learned a ton about stuff. Not just mocking, but building libraries, testing, making sure things work, adding features, all these things. And it's been wonderful. So there was value even in just that, even in just building it and maintaining it. There's been value for me to do that. So, all right. What's left here that I want to do or just ignore to the next to the next milestone? Practice stuff and learn a lot of things. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why, even if there's something that exists out there already that does what you want, A, maybe it doesn't do exactly what you want, or B, you just want to learn how do you do that? How do you make that work? And so there is value in doing that. You just have to justify in your head the time and commitment involved in the learning. And that's, I'm not saying that's a hard thing to do. I'm just saying there's some learning available there. So there's this one feature that I thought of adding for a big integer. Like if I say toString on a big integer, I will get the whole number. Big integers are arbitrarily large in .NET. So I don't want to necessarily print out a whole huge number. And so what I thought was, could I do something where, and this was just a sketch of what somebody responded to my question about doing this. And so the idea that I had was just to say, could I create something that basically says, well, it starts with n number of characters and ends with n number of characters, or n or m, whatever you want to say. And so maybe the idea is to do, and I'd have to look at this code again here. And I want to make sure that I have not done this already. Because I don't think I have, because there would be a big integer extensions class in here, and there isn't. Because we would want to do something like a toString extension method that has like those two format values to say like what's the charge before and after, and if the actual size of if the size of the buffer, whatever we do, or if the size of the actual big integer is equal to or less than this. Like if we wanted to do 5.5 and the number itself was only 8 numbers in length, there's no point in formatting. You just literally do toString on it, because there's no point in doing that. If it's more though, then I think there's value in doing so. So it might be interesting to try this and to see if I can get a big integer extension method to work this way. So that's one idea. And there's, I think, one or two other things. This bind thing, blah, I don't even want to bother with that. I might even just delete that. Partial methods and exception. Oh yeah, there was like 2 methods in there I needed to. And then this one. I thought, could Spackle have a way to say, given a collection of ints, create all the ranges that represent the bounds of the values in the array? So for example, if I have, what's this video? It's a YouTube video. I don't even remember what it is. I think it might be a number file video. So what I want to do, I don't even know. Basically for each number x, if there are no ranges, add xx. For each range, if x is in the range, if not, but the next, I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about here. I don't even know. Ranges that represent the bounds of the values in the array. Well, it's saying here because you have 1, 2, and 3, and the ranges in Spackle are exclusive end. So that's saying 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then you have a 5, which isn't part of any of those ranges. So you see 5 and 6, and then you have 7, which would be 7 and 8. So it's telling you, here are all the unique ranges that represent this list of numbers. What is this video? I don't want to run this if C# sort generators. Huh. I don't want a commercial. Stop it. So it was some person's video on writing source generators, and they were talking about something. I'll have to look at that on my own time and figuring out what that actually means. Because I think I kind of remember what I was doing here. I'm not really sure how much benefit this would have. And for why. This one might be a little bit more interesting to do. So, and by the way, I mentioned rocks here. If you are a .NET developer, I'd ask to please look at this. Not that I want to add issues to it, because if it's working, it's working, but I do have a handful of issues out here, not necessarily looking for people to fix stuff, but there's not much more that I've been finding to do in here. And I don't want to just add issues to add issues. You know what I mean? That would be, that would be kind of annoying. So, because I don't want to just, if it works, it works. If it's working the way it is, then that's fine. But there are a couple things in here that I might want to go back and look at and do. So I may want to jump onto that project as well. Okay, where am I? I'm all over the place here. So maybe I work on this one, because I could see this kind of being nice, especially if you're like, well, I know I'm going to get a big number, and all I really want to look at are like the first couple of digits or the last couple of digits, you know. And maybe you say something like the number you pass in could be 0, so that what you could print out is like if the beginning is 0, it's like saying, I don't care what's at the beginning, I just want to see like the last n digits. So both of them have to be, one or the other has to be greater than 0. But you could have one of them being 0. That might be interesting to do. Yeah, I think I might. I don't know if I'll finish it in this stream. I think I might just get this started a little bit, and then I'll pick it up on the next stream. Actually, if I'm looking at my time, I think I'm going to stop here because for time reasons, I got some stuff to do around the house. I got some other things to do. So, and I do want to get a couple streams in today because, again, I am last day of vacation, so I want to get some more Control video game playing in with streams this afternoon. So I think at this point I'm going to stop. I do want to thank everybody for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I would really appreciate it. As I said, last day of vacation, so I'm going to get on a much more normal schedule for the next 2 months, which is gaming streams will be Tuesday night, 7 p.m.-ish Central, and Thursday night, 4:30 p.m.-ish Central. And then whenever I feel like it on the weekends, and Random Code streams are just random whenever I feel like doing them. So again, thanks everybody for stopping by, and I am going to end the stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.